Hello ladies and gentlemen, Zeke here again today to bring you a quick little painting tutorial. And this is going to be a painting tutorial kind of on this scheme, but more on how to actually paint with oils in general. Painting with oils can be very fast compared to painting with acrylics, especially in the way that I do it. There are plenty of methods out there, but I'm going to teach you mine and give you some of the basics for getting started with oil paints on minis. It is not intimidating. It uses some chemicals that you shouldn't be huffing, but it's not too dangerous. People have painted with mineral spirits for hundreds of years. So let's get started on this. I'm going to go ahead and pick up a zenithal primed model. This does assume that you know how to do a zenithal prime. If you don't, that's alright. You can start with a gray, but you should start with a fairly light color if you're going to be using my methods. So you can see there's a lot of shadow under there, but it is mostly primed in white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, this is my palette. It looks very intimidating. I keep the same palette going for days at a time. Get out of your noodle. This is the second time I've almost had to restart the video due to noodle. There we go. So I have a little pill bottle here which has my personal information, so I'll try to not show that. That is full of mineral spirits. I'm going to open that and put it beside me right there. And this palette may look a bit intimidating. The palette can stay wet for several days. The paints can last anywhere from 2 to 3, or 1 to 2 to 3 days, depending on the pigment and exactly how thick it is and the brand. But right here, we're only going to be using this little set of paints, which I put there yesterday. And I will give you the names of the paints I'm using because the names are going to be represented across brands. There are famous types of oil paint that are consistent and always will have the same types of effects and properties. It's one of the advantages of oil painting. So what we're going to start with is a couple of tinting colors. So I have right here Dyke Brown and right here Mars Black. Those are not super transparent, but what they do is they leave a tint behind even if you take them off of the model. So I'm going to take a tiny, or wet my brush in a fair amount of mineral spirits, and I'm going to use that in order to pick up some of this black up here, and I'm going to put it elsewhere. Then I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of the Dyke Brown, and I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of the red that just happens to be in there, because I like the idea of adding some red to my initial pre-glaze. That is what this is called, and really black should almost not be on your palette, but it is used for pre-glazing and setting up the shadows before you start painting. So at the same time as it should never be on your palette, it should always be on your palette. So let's go ahead and just paint that all over. I should also show you some of the stuff I have to set up. I have about 5 paintbrushes in my reach. I have one detail brush I will not be using much. I have a couple of these blue cheap synthetic brushes. They cost 30 cents each. And I have a couple brushes that I don't care about, but that have soft tips. Those are going to be for wet blending, because wet blending is the thing you do when you are oil painting. So I'm going to add a tiny bit more of this paint to my palette. Get a nice big pile of it and just paint it all over. Fairly thin. You can almost consider this like a wash, but a bit thicker. I'm sorry if I not go around any of my cameras. I'm kind of just getting this set up, and I don't have a perfect setup yet. I am not a cameraman. I will not sing you a song because I'm the cameraman. I will sing you a song because I'm Yesic, and I can never fucking stop singing as I do things. Sing us a song, you're the Yesic man. Sing us a song tonight. So this whole step, fairly boring, which is why I am now singing to you instead of explaining what I'm doing. I will try my best to keep things in focus and on camera, but I have already forgotten that at least once just now, which is why I'm bringing it up. There's something I'm trying to get used to right now. So now that I have done this, the other thing that you will need is some makeup sponges. I'm going to try to put in the description everything you'll need. So there's Dyke Brown, Mars Black. Those are good tinting colors. You're going to want those, and you can get them in any brand. A intermediate to professional brand would be best. You don't need to go with a hobby-specific brand. I saw an article recently saying that hobby paints are more pigmented, which is insanely stupid. Professional grade oil paints that cost $60 a bottle for very specific pigments do tend to have higher pigmentation than just your off-the-shelf hobby brands. and so do the intermediate to expert regularly available oil paints. Oils are, however, a heavy body paint, so you can see I just removed almost all of that with a makeup sponge, but it has left this fairly strong brownish black tint. So now I'm going to go against my own advice, and I'm going to use a bit more black, but I'm going to use a transparent black and a tinting black, this Mars black again, and a blue right here. This is Ultramarine blue, which is confusingly not the color of Ultramarines. Since I've already done the pre-glaze, I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and put the tiny bit of blue I picked up into this black, because I want a bluish tone to my black. Add a tiny bit more Van Dyke Brown, add a tiny bit more black. I actually want a fair pile of paint here so I can keep using it. And now I'm not pre-glazing, now I'm actually painting the model, and I'm going to go ahead and cover the entire horse in this. Some people might wonder, like, what about your highlights? What about your lowlights? And you know what? Like, those will come later. For now, let's just cover this. The great thing about oil paint is that it has a very, very long working time. So you can see how this already kind of has a fairly good look for a black horse. If I were to take off some of the top level of the paint that I'm currently putting on, it would actually just naturally highlight the horse in a way that looks incredibly realistic. I'm going to go ahead and pick out the hooves in as firm of black as I can get, because I won't even be highlighting those. Krieg horses have very, very weird hooves, which are like taloned. I love them. They are my cute little shovelly boys, and they are my favorite. So just get the entire horse, anything that is horse hair or horse flesh, and you don't have to be overly careful with this. You can always pick up after yourself if you make a mistake. Oil, again, has a very long working time. You will not want to touch the model ever, because it will come off. Like, this will not dry for the next day, and if I touch it, it will come off on my finger. So let's go ahead and finish up the skin right here. You can always come back and get anything you missed after you see it. And then I'm going to... I didn't get the neck up here. And while I have the black, I like to do the inside of the horse eyes black as well, because they're so big and they don't have eyes sculpted in. So like, I can't put red in there or a color. It doesn't look like a lens. So I just paint it black, and then I pick out the ears as well up here, because he has a little reverse hat. Gas mask only. So now I put down pretty much the entire layer of black here. And I'm going to highlight, I guess you can put that in quotations. Going to pick up this makeup sponge here and kind of just like dab the top surface. I'm actually going to dip that in a tiny bit of mineral spirits in order to get a tiny bit more paint removed. And I'm going to very gently kind of like take off some of the surface layer of paint here in order to get some highlights in at the knees and at all the like little bony bits. But I'm really not trying to pick up anything that is in anything resembling a crevice. So now I have a fairly, like, it has some highlights on it, but the thing is, it doesn't look very natural. Even black fur, black hair in real life has a lot of, like, browns, blues. That's how vision works. Everything reflects off of everything else. So nothing is a pure color in real life. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some Van Dyke Brown, which is, again, a tinting color. Mixing colors that have similar or different properties together will kind of apply those properties to each other. So got a kind of Van Dyke Brown red or white here, except Van Dyke Brown is not a very brown, so I'm going to go ahead and add some cadmium red. Be very careful if you use cadmium. It is made of cadmium, which is a heavy metal, which can give you heavy metal poisoning. So I'm actually going to use this to get some color into the raised dominant sections. I'm just more or less dry brushing here. It might actually be kind of hard to even see this color go on. But it is there. Let's see if I can kind of feature it. I should maybe go a bit more extreme with some of these. One of the issues with oils is that since they are so reflective, they don't film particularly well until you matte varnish them. You do need to varnish oils, and you are going to need a spray-on varnish because you could damage the oil paint with a paint-on varnish. So there are some requirements to oil paints. You get those highlights in there. And now I have like a kind of nice little brownish highlight all over. I'm going to get that tail too. And I'm going to pick up a brush that has no paint on it right now. You might notice I don't always wash and dry my brushes. Sometimes I just like to leave what's on there, and since it's oil paint, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to do some blending so these highlights don't look super stark. Even if I zoom in, they look more naturally blended in. And again, the benefits of oil is that you can do exactly this. So currently, because that is a little bit of detail work and my camera setup is not that vibrant, can you see it in there more? I don't know. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a tiny bit of white to this little color that I've already made up here. I didn't mean to use this brush to do it, so I'm going to wash that off pretty well. I'm pretty rough with my brushes when it comes to washing them because oil likes to get in the bristles. Oil does also, on the other hand, really like to shape your brush since it's such a heavy body medium. So it doesn't matter if you damage your brushes or if your brushes are super cheap because they just won't be damaged. So I'm gonna do a more stark highlight here. I feel like I didn't quite go hard enough on the white. Never be afraid to highlight up to a very bright color. I paint a style that many will call grim dark, and even me. And grim dark, even though it sounds like it is all about being very dark, is all about the contrast and the highlight. So you need to highlight up as much as possible and have your shadows as dark as possible in order to get grim dark. So you might notice this paint isn't going on like an acrylic at all. Instead I'm getting like little blobby pieces of paint. Don't mind that. Sometimes the actual painting itself is another palette. That is how oil painting works. You kind of work the paints around the palette and push them, blend them, adjust them until you have something you're happy with. So again, going a bit lighter on those highlights and then wiping the paint off pretty roughly and then going in with my blending brush and kind of smoothing out those transitions. I'm really hoping this is picking up nicely on camera. I'm looking at my screen right now and I'm like, you can barely see these highlights, but highlighting black is such a ridiculous thing to do always. Okay, anyways, let's move on to some colors you can actually see. So now I'm going to move on to the browns on this guy. The only thing that's really going to be a fairly light color comparatively on him is, oh my god, that is such a horribly glued on arm. Anyways, is going to be his coat, which is going to be a pale blue-gray, which you see I have mixed over here from the other day, but I will mix it again for you. So you are going to want a good red. Earlier I warned you about the dangers of cadmium, but what I didn't mention is that almost everything you see in daily life is a shade of red. So if I take this red here that I have just lost because I can't remember where I put it because I should really probably replace this, and then I add black to it, it starts becoming a brown. A lot of browns will also have yellow in them or a tiny bit of blue, and you can adjust your brown by adding those things, but be careful not to add too much at a time. So now I have this kind of deep reddish brown here, but I'm going to add a bit of white to that to desaturate it because I don't need a deep reddish brown. I kind of need like a leathery, suede-y yellowish, and I don't have any yellow on here, and I'm not going to go get some, so I'm just going to desaturate with white. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick out his boots, the saddles, and the masks with this leather. I could have maybe started this a tiny bit darker. It's not applying super nicely right now. This is the consistency I'm getting would be a great consistency for like adding detail or going over a fairly wet layer. But You want to kind of adjust the consistency as you go and kind of play with it. So I'm adding a half brush worth of mineral spirit to this pile, and now you will see it applies much more nicely. Yeah, there we go. If the paint is dry, apply a wet paint over it. If the paint is wet, apply a dry paint over it. That is a general rule of thumb for oil paints, although not always true. I'm also going to pick out the wood. I'll try to highlight these later so they look like different materials, but I just need a base layer of brown where all the browns are going at the moment. Don't be too afraid to get any brown on your horse. You can always pick it up with a Q-tip that is dipped in mineral spirits, or just blend it in so it looks like a natural highlight or a light reflection. Again, remember, everything reflects off of anything. And the person who taught me how to do oil painting always used to say that if you put a color somewhere, you might as well put a color everywhere. So, like, it just doesn't matter that much. Gonna pick out his gloves here. You might notice that I'm working with the shape of the brush as I go. I'm mostly using what would be called a filbert, where I brush the brush and it turns into a flat edge. Let's see if I can get this nicely on camera here. So I have this nice little flat edge that has a very sharp little section, and it's not a sharp point, but because I have a sharp edge, I can draw very straight, sharp lines. So I'm always reshaping my brush as I paint with oil paints, and then figuring out what shape I need next, and kind of using the excuse of blending the colors together in order to get the shape that I want. You can also shape the brush on your palette. Again, one of the advantages of oil is how heavy body the medium is. So, imagine using cooking oil. It's the same stuff. Actually, sometimes it is the exact same stuff. You can use flaxseed oil as a oil medium. But imagine using cooking oil on your paintbrush, how that would kind of like adjust its shape as you went. So you don't need to maintain your brushes that well, but it is nice to clean them, but you do have to shape them or else you'll end up with very, very bad shaped brushes. It's something to just keep in mind as you paint. Get this from all angles. Grab his mask. There we go. I'm kind of nervous that I'm going to like miss things that I would normally do or skip steps because I'm recording and because I have like a tiny bit of anxiety about that. So remember, if you put a color somewhere, put it everywhere. So I'm just like, does any of this belong on the horse? Sure. Here, here, here. You just throw it around a bit. And then this shaft for the wooden spear might as well be brown. I have a dirt brown here. This actually is a hobby paint, so I don't know what exact pigment this is, which is why I wouldn't generally use it, but it is a red brown, has a bit of yellow in it. So if you want to mix it yourself, that's what you'd be using. So I'm gonna just get some of that on my brush, and then it's not wet enough to spread, so add a tiny bit of mineral spirits to it, and then just kind of grab the entire spear, slightly different shade. There's also a little grenade handle here that you might as well pick out, get the entire inside of the spear. I'm not too careful about painting everything, but I am fairly careful about at least painting what is easily visible. Unpainted shadows, if you kind of paint this style, will look very natural. And you don't have to worry about it too much. Get that handle a bit. Try to adjust the model, not your brush, in order to figure out how to get strokes in, because it is always best to brace your hands on themselves in order to be as stable as possible. Lots of people have shaky hands. I have shaky hands. The solution to that, as far as you can go, is to make sure you are as stable as possible. I am painting on my couch, as you can see, and I have my hand here, my other hand braces on that hand braces there. As many points of my elbows are planted on the ground and on my hip, as many points of contact as possible in order to keep brush control. Okay, there we go. I've gotten most of the brown here. I'm not entirely happy with how it turned out on the horses, but I actually like doing these little tubes on the horses, which I think are drug injectors, also in leather. I don't think this is accurate or even like a good thing to do, but I kind of like the idea that Krieg used horses instead of tanks because they were running out of materials in order to build tanks. So they thought it was easier to have like a disposable type of thing, like their soldiers are disposable. I forget why I was bringing this up. So my idea here is that they use leather as their tubing because leather is a nice natural material that can be grown and is easier to produce on a planet like Krieg than something like plastics or metals. Or possibly they harvest their dead horses and get the leather out of them. Krieg are pretty terrible people. So it's like they're not giving their horses proper burials, and like, is it actually that evil to not waste a horse? I don't know. Not saying that Krieg is not evil, by the way. Krieg is very clearly evil. Everybody in Warhammer is the bad guy. I will not be taking questions or debates on that. There is no good guy in Warhammer. There are good people, or at least people trying their best, but there are no good guys. So already this is actually looking like a pretty decent model with just the brown in there. I feel like my saturation is really bad. Let me just try to fix my camera a little bit here. Up my saturation a tiny bit so you can actually kind of see what's going on. Any recommendations for settings like more brightness, less brightness? I would very much recommend here. I just turned the brightness up a tiny... Oh, way too much. Alright, and that makes it easier to see. Next, I'm going to deal with kind of like the washed out leather. So I already have this leather down, and he is wearing... I forget what they're called. They are the wraps that they wore in World War I around their feet. The British soldiers in putties, I think? Anyways... normally what I would do is I would add a tiny bit of yellow to this brown in order to get that, but all I have is this bright orange, and okay, you know what? Here's a yellow, and this is like a pale off-white yellow. You probably don't want to use a pure yellow for this. This is a parchment yellow, just going to put it up there. I like to have a lot of my starting paints on the board, but, you know, you take a few as you need them. And I put a fair amount on. It'll last me for a while. So I'm going to take that, put that over here, and just mix it with what's on my brush. Take a bit of this, take a bit of this, and now I have a nice desaturated, like, backpack, suede, I don't know, you know, just a more natural kind of cloth fiber. Less leather, more cloth. Pale sand, some might call it. Sorry, pale sand is like a legendary acrylic paint that people love because it has just good coverage, consistency, all that jazz. Don't be afraid of leaving like some black gaps in between things. When two things touch in real life, they create a black line. It is a very natural phenomenon. Sometimes that is lost when it comes to miniature paintings because it doesn't happen at that small of a scale. So now I'm going to take the same desaturated brown that I just used on those putties, and I did not do that foot, so I'll have to go back and do that in a bit. I'm going to do some little like scratchy highlights. These will be blended in later, so they'll actually be a bit less scratchy, but it'll give the leather a tiny bit of personality, a tiny bit of wear, kind of an edge highlight where the light would actually hit things. Mask here. Just a little highlight there in order to get a bit of tone and wear on the leather. Once again, a few little... as you paint from the model will get on your brush and it will darken over time, so just go and pick up a tiny bit more and keep going. Sometimes just putting down the paint is the objective, and then you can deal with what the paint is or does later. So just a bunch of little edge highlights around wherever you want to put them. Around these eye holes, on all the little edges of the leather. Let's get some on his fingers. Want to actually get a bit more yellow in this, a bit more yellow-white. Paint it on the side of your hand to see how it looks like and what it comes off as. I don't recommend that, especially not when you have cadmium in things, so I better wash that thumb later. And just kind of like get everything looking. I'm going to keep less highlights on this spear because I think wood is a nice natural reddish brown a lot of the time, or at least a wood tone that I like. But I am going to go to his mask and get a couple of little highlights on there. Figure out why my music has stopped. Turn that up a bit. And move on. I'm going to take this opportunity while I have a ton of browns on my board to just take my big paintbrush one more time, which I usually only use for the pre-glaze really early on. And I am going to take that brush and create like a thinned dirt brown. Take that, put it over here. A lot of browns are very transparent, so like look up what the effects of the paint are before you actually buy a paint. Like very traditional colors like a burnt sienna or a burnt umber will actually work as more of a filter than you think. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put that first layer of color down, but it's down as almost an oil wash right now, so I'm going to give it a tiny bit of time to set, and then I'm going to move on to the next part. Why not do some of the metal right now? Metallic paints like applying over darker tones. So let's go ahead and grab some like Van Dyke Brown black here. I actually want a fair amount, so I'm going to start over there. And then I'm going to pick out all the sections I want to be metallic. Metallic oil paints are very rare, so you have a couple options. You can mix your own metallic oil paints out of metallic pigments, which is a lot of fun, and I have done that. I have a few of them hanging out over here. But what you can also do is, or you can buy some of the very rare metallics. I know Kama is a brand that has metallics, and a few other brands have metallics. So what I want here is more of a gray than a black, just to know. Think of the background color of steel. Kind of like all the darks and the shadows. You want to get those shadows right away, because what I have for a steel is essentially a transparent steel. So it's a filter of metallic that goes over whatever you've painted under it. And a lot of metallics are actually fairly transparent in this way, even in acrylics. So generally, that is what I recommend doing. So while I'm at doing all the metallics, I might as well pick out anything that should just be black. So I want this like pipe here to be mostly black, so I might as well pick that out. I want the horse mask things to be black, so I'm going to pick them out. Yeah, there we go. And I just realized he has a leather-ass collar around his neck, so I will be going ahead and grabbing that horse collar, probably in the reddish brown that I was using earlier, which is back here. There we go. Using essentially a highlight brush for this, and oh yeah, his collar is what I was doing. Fortunately, this place is in shadow. I won't have to do that much highlighting on it. Oh, just got a bunch of paint where it shouldn't have gone, but that is all right. Let's just pick that up with my finger. I don't feel like using anything too fancy for that. Get rid of this again, get the black back on the brush. There is some like weird mechanical stuff here in his drug injector. Grab this little black thing. I don't know if this little part here, this ridge, is supposed to be hair or part of this drug injection system. So I've been painting it as both. Remembering that I missed that shoe now, so going back, I literally... This type of workflow is how I like to do oils, because it gives layers time to kind of like cure and set. They don't exactly dry, but they're easier to paint on top of after. Then I can go and pick up some more of this yellow, grab a quick highlight on the base of this, grab a couple more highlights here, which will blend in later. Grab a highlight around this entire edge. This shoe. Grab your blending brush, and just kind of blend those in a little bit, because they're a bit stark at the moment. And you can see I'm just kind of dabbing to blend them in. And I got a nice little look to it. Perfect. Next step. So this is looking a bit set now on the bottom. It doesn't look like a pure liquid, it looks like some of it has dissolved. So that means I can go in with some of my other shades of brown that I've already mixed. This is why I kind of like doing my bases a bit later, because I always end up with a whole variety of browns. And in order to make wood, like some of this is wood, some of this is mud. The mud, I like the dark tone that it started with, but I'm going to put some like red-brown in there, just, I'm going to call this a dry brush, but it's not really, it's more of a tacky brush, where I'm actually adding like some texture to things, and let's go ahead and sometimes I'll actually have two brushes in my hand in order to just very quickly do a blend on things. There we go, got some of the red-brown on the ground here. Then I'm going to use the same red-brown on all the wood things, but less thinned. Actually, I'm going to use like some of my mixed red-brown here, yeah. So that gives a nice color to the wood. And then wood wears around the edges, so this is like wood that is out of the factory. And then if I take this yellow and apply it kind of all over this wood, and you can see very much wet blending here. And then pick up my blending brush and give it a little like blend in to get some variety in the wood tones. Pick up anything else that's wood on there, like this grenade for instance. Realize that there are some little metal bits on the ground and paint them in black. If the brown gets on it, that is fine. There would be dirt on these metal parts. Again, cross-contamination of colors is not only fine, but often desirable. Do not let people fool you into thinking that painting or art in general is about perfection of style, of realism. Okay. So now time for my metallic. I actually am going to go ahead and use a custom mixed metallic here. This is I didn't really plan for this. Instead I planned for, you know what, instead this is a custom mixed metallic, but I'm going to use this Kama brand, this is zinc white. This Kama brand, this is zinc white again, because for some reason I bought 2 tubes of it. Silver. So sometimes you have to kind of experiment with a paint. I got this metallic paint that I think is made of not mica, but actual metallic pigment. Thing is, whether a pigment is transparent or not is kind of a crapshoot when the paint is made. So it turns out that if you crush up whatever they crushed up here and use it in order to paint stuff, you end up with more of a filter than you do a solid color. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of that, then I'm actually going to mix it with this very small amount of black, transparent black brown that I've created, and I'm going to use that on all the metallic bits. Pick them out real quick. You don't actually have to get perfect coverage on the metallic bits, and they might look better if you don't. Grab his shoulder pads. I sometimes do their shoulder pads painted, sometimes do them metallic, I sometimes do them painted with metallic showing. Grab the sword. Grab the bits of shovel, because you gotta have your shovel on your Kriegs guy. Grab the little connection points here, the machinery on the top of this guy. Get a bunch of paint on your fingers as you touch the base, which you shouldn't be doing. You know, all the usual stuff, the ends of the spear, the metal segments on the spear, like the grenade, the tip, and the strap that holds the grenade onto the tip, and then the entire helmet. Try to avoid the Aquila because it's easier to apply an initial color than to blend with metallics sometimes. Oh man, quite the hip hop going on right now. And then go in here. I have a lot of black just chilling out in this little hole here, so get rid of that. And just pick up some of this pure silver here. Grab it on your thumb and... That is not a habit I recommend unless you're wearing a glove, but it is pretty useful to be able to see how your paint is going on anything, to just kind of like flick it across your thumb. Then these two little sections here I like to be metal. And then you can actually kind of use metal as a general highlight sometimes if you want to, especially if it's a very shiny metal. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw some onto their pipes here, but very subtly. And I almost have no metal on the brush now, so time to do the little hand cover things. And pretty done with that. Realized I missed a leather part, go back to the leather, should still be wet. And grab all of his little pouches. If your paint does dry a bit, just get a bit more mineral spirits, or if you keep it a little cup of linseed oil, that will retard the drying rate. Kind of missed this here. Go ahead and grab this pouch back here. Then his little pouches that I kind of missed, and somehow completely ignored that he is wearing a huge amount of armor. I always forget that these horse riders, usually they wear these big overcoats, and these horse riders are too. But I sometimes forget that sometimes they also wear like breastplates. So just go ahead and grab that breastplate. I'm not going to carefully paint the whole breastplate because it's in there, I did it in the wrong order, and it looks almost like metal already. So I'm selling the effect of metal, not metal itself. And get in there a tiny bit. There we go. Now I've got a nice metal shine on that. Perfect. And at this point, the model is almost done. It's looking like some of the highlights on the ground are maybe a bit less intense than I would like them to be, so I'm going to go ahead and get a bit more of this yellow and dot it down here. I'm applying this poorly on purpose. First of all, I'll see how it dims when it cures a tiny bit, and then I will blend it in so it actually creates a better wood look. And I think I just need a bit more like red-brown down on the actual dirt. There we go. Now that has set a bit, pick up my blending brush and just kind of like blend all this in a little bit. Remember to bring my whole painting setup further right. Pick out some of these little weird ground details. Who knows what they're supposed to be? They can be a bit beige. Go ahead, grab the metallics again, shape your brush on the edge of the plate right here or on your thumb, then pick out the little rivets so they have a little bit of metallic shine to them. Now remember, this works as a filter, but these would be rusted anyways. And get a bit more of a stark metallic there, tiny bit more metal on the helmet. Go with some of the pure metal right now, in order to grab some highlights to make this shinier, make the edge here shinier. Why not make a little highlight right here, little highlight right there, a little highlight there, get the edge of the spear in a like very bright metallic, and I think I more or less call it a day. Get a tiny bit more paint on this breastplate. Yeah, one more thing. I actually have to mix a bit more of my gold right now. I use the Green Stuff World Gold Pigment and linseed oil in order to mix this, but it's very hard to get out of the bottle after it's very hard to store in a bottle to begin with. I don't have a perfect process for mixing small amounts of oil paint yet, but I'm getting better. I will maybe do another video on that later. Trying to get some gold out of this gold. Yeah, I got some. Haha. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure there is nothing on my detail brush by just kind of wiping it off. Then I will go ahead and dip the detail brush in a tiny bit of this mineral spirit. And grab my, oh my god, I almost spilled my mineral spirit. Grab a tiny bit of that gold. And just grab the tiny skull on the front of the horse here. And the Aquila on the helmet. And do I want some gold anywhere else? Don't think so. So this is where I'm going to call it for now. Here is the one it was based on. You could paint a nice black rim now and then put it down very carefully so you don't touch that black rim until you do the curing. You can see this one has the matte varnish on it. I haven't finished. I haven't done his blue. Okay, so I guess a bit more video to go. And this one doesn't, so when you put the matte varnish on, it does make it much nicer to film and see. But that blue is the highlight, so let's go ahead and make that right now. I'm just going to use a brush that is fairly firm here, or fairly big and I don't care about, to pick up a decent amount of white. Let's put it down here. This one, I think I already used it to mix the same color, so just quite a decent amount of white. A tiny bit of ultramarine blue to create like a baby blue. And there's the baby blue, then the tiniest dot of black in order to darken it down to a gray blue. And I'm going to put a tiny bit more blue here for a shade. I'm going to add a tiny bit of black to that to make it more of a shade. Yeah, there we go. And you know what? I think blue will shade down a bit better if I do it with Dyke Brown. Yeah, so there we go. There's my shade. There's my main coat color. And my highlight color will actually be that baby blue. So let's actually mix a tiny bit more of that baby blue as well. Just get a bit more of that, because I want a fairly bright blue as my main highlight. There we go, and there I have my shade, my midtone, and my highlight. So let's go ahead and pick whatever, when I say pick whatever brush, use your 30-cent brush. You can adjust the tip. So let's go ahead and start by putting down, oh my god, there's red on this brush. Ah! Okay, fortunately I didn't contaminate everything, and it doesn't matter that much. So let's go ahead and pick up some of this now reddish, pale blue. It'll still read right, I think. And just cover all of the coat with that. I wish I hadn't forgotten about this so that I could like let it cure a bit between layers, but I will do my best. I will do the best around, and very few people are going to keep me down about it, okay? So, best around. There we go. Pick up a bit more of that as it darkens, because you keep picking up that Dyke Brown you started with, right? Trying to kind of fix up that gap by just filling it with paint. Should have fixed that earlier by filling it with like a plastic putty, but I didn't notice it. Well, I did notice it, I just didn't care enough. I was so excited to get this recorded that I was just like, let's go. Let's have at her. There we go, now I have a nice pale blue on the coat. When I say pale blue, I kind of mean like a chromatic brown, but you know, that's a pale blue if all you can ever paint is grim dark. I'm going to go ahead and grab some of the shadow tone here, paint it into the middle of both these places, paint it into the cracks a bit, decide that it is not shadowy enough, so I'm going to go pick up like just almost pure 50-50 blue with black. And I'm going to paint that into the shadows. Dry paint works on top of wet paint works on top of dry paint. So just kind of paint that in. It's going to look a bit ugly to start. And keep in mind, I have not yet done the highlights or the inside of the coat over here. So get all that off my brush. I find the best method is to be aggressive on the towel, then be aggressive in the mineral spirits, then be aggressive on the towel once more. Then pick up some more of this. Throw that on his coat, which is a bit hard to get. Remember, adjust the model, not your hands. Try not to paint with your hands in weird positions whenever possible. Starting to get lazy here because I wasn't expecting this part. So, you know, I don't have to actually be too careful about the highlights and lowlights there because that is a less visible section. But I do have to now pick up the low light again and essentially panel line, but like not carefully. Because with oil, you can just blend out the panel lines later, so you don't have to be that careful. There we go, and just in there. And you know what, let's put a tiny bit more in here just to darken it up. And then back to the blending brush, which is over here. Wow. I wasn't expecting this playlist to go so hard to the to the hip hop because it started with bit tunes. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I like hip hop, but this is not my it's not really hip hop either. So don't get offended at me calling it that, but you know what I mean. It's like techno hop. What would you call this? Go ahead and so the funny thing is, my highlight color is actually a darker color than my primary color, but it is still a highlight because it is a tonal highlight, meaning that it has more vibrancy, like more color to it. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of that and paint it onto the sections I really want to read as blue. I'm going to actually even pick up a bit more blue to put it in this, and a bit more white. Using my neon blue here might not have been a bad idea. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to essentially glaze the blue over this so that it looks more blue. And then I'm going to blend that in as needed. There we go. And then our blending brush. Oh no, my model seems like, oh no, Murdoch! Ah, I can't cuddle right now, man! He's gonna want to though. And then just kind of spread this around the model a little bit. Put it in some places where it might be missing. And now I'm done. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't really have like a bonus like I don't edit my videos. So normally this is where you would get a really nice finished shot. Here's the turntable. I don't have a turntable. Well, I do. I don't know where it is. But I will post pictures of this on both my 3D printing Discord and my my Instagram, so if you want to see the finished product after the post cure is up, it will be on there. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.